Tonight, hospital under siege. Israeli forces concentrate the battle around Gaza City's largest hospital, said to be serving as Hamas terror group headquarters. This is American warplanes strike Iran-backed forces in Syria. Plus, the most wanted man in Israel.
The IDF considers Sinwar a direct enemy of the state of Israel.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A hospital on life support, now the epicenter of the fighting in Gaza. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. Israeli forces are closing in around Gaza's largest hospital, which Israel claims Hamas is using as a shield for its headquarters. The battle lines now raging around Gaza City's main hospital puts patients at risk, according to hospital officials, who say the facility has no electricity. That's forced the removal of 39 premature babies from their incubators, seen here lined up on a gurney in a heated room. The Israeli military says it's ready to help transport the infants to safety. 9 Americans are still missing since the militant group attacked Israel last month, including a 3-year-old whose parents were killed in the massacre. Hamas is still holding 239 hostages in all.
We know the number of missing, and that's the number the Israelis have given, but we don't know how many of those are still alive.
Meanwhile, the U.S. continues to strike against Iranian-backed military targets in the Middle East. American warplanes bombed a weapons depot and a command and control center in Syria Sunday. In an unrelated incident, 5 U.S. service members died in a helicopter crash. The chopper carrying Special Operations Forces went down in the eastern Mediterranean due to a mishap while conducting a routine air refueling mission during training. The troops were deployed to potentially evacuate American citizens kidnapped by Hamas. U.S. presence in the region has expanded as a result of the battle against Iranian-backed proxies. So far, the military response has been limited over the concerns it could ignite a larger war. CBN's Gary Lane brings us this report on several Middle East militia groups that have joined Hamas in the fight against Israel and the United States since the start of the Gaza war.
Rockets fired against Israel from Lebanon and Yemen. U.S. troops also under attack. The Iranian regime continues to wage war indirectly in the Middle East through a network of proxy militias. For Iran, it's all about plausible deniability. The Islamic regime can claim it's not behind or involved in these attacks, all the while calling for death to the Zionist and America. It's important to know how far these Iranian tentacles reach throughout the region. Among them include the Houthis, a tribe of Shiite Muslims out of Yemen. This homegrown militia calls itself Ansarullah, the Fighters of Allah. Through Iranian support, the Houthis have greatly multiplied from about 2,000 armed fighters in 2005 to as many as 120,000 today.
Like Hamas, it depends on the Iranians for its military abilities, for its hardware, for its missiles, for its rockets, for its weaponry. The Houthis in Yemen are one of the clients that the Iranians like to switch on and off when they want to attack an enemy country without being held directly responsible for it.
In 2019, Houthis launched a massive drone attack, targeting the world's largest oil processing facility in Saudi Arabia. Since the October 7th attack, the Saudis, United Arab Emirates, and United States have shot down Houthi missiles and drones headed for Israel. A greater threat than this group comes from South Lebanon, where Hezbollah has more than 150,000 rockets ready to launch en masse against Israel. Created and supported by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, Hezbollah also controls the Lebanese government. Last week, in a public speech, leader Hassan Nasrallah stopped short of announcing an all-out war, while indicating all options were on the table. Middle East Forum chief researcher Jonathan Spire.
Iran has yet to instruct Hezbollah to really plunge into total involvement in the war and open a second front. They're trying to kind of distract attention from Israel with this drip of consistent attacks each day.
Spire believes the presence of the USS Gerald Ford carrier strike group in the region, combined with Israeli military power, is currently deterring greater involvement.
Israel has made clear if Hezbollah does enter the war, Israel will hit back against Lebanon with full force.
Further east, the little-known proxy group Islamic Resistance in Iraq could potentially distract and ultimately pose a great threat to the United States. 2,500 U.S. troops are stationed at bases in Iraq, with as many as 1,000 remaining in Syria. Their presence is designed to limit influence from Russia and Iran in the region. Over the past 2 weeks, the IRI has claimed responsibility for repeated attacks against U.S. troops, including at least 23 missile strikes and multiple drone strikes. This little-known group, formed in 2020, is comprised of members from various smaller Iranian-backed militias.
Not really feasible or tenable for America to continue kind of absorbing these hits. At least if America wants this to stop, the United States should take a little bit firmer action against these militias. At the end of the day, these are these are military acts. These are acts of war. Even if they're not, if nobody's yet been hurt or killed in them, thank goodness. I think that it's not really acceptable that United States forces should be facing daily harassment.
So far, the United States response has been limited to airstrikes in Syria on locations linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Greater steps against these proxies or their boss could come in various forms, including more severe oil sanctions or even strikes inside Iran. Military leaders, however, realize that either action could successfully result in deterrence or an escalation that possibly leads to a much bigger war. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thank you, Gary. Back here at home, lawmakers are scrambling to avoid another possible government shutdown. With just days before funding runs out, new House Speaker Mike Johnson is pitching a plan to fund federal services like veterans programs and housing until January 19th. His plan also extends funding for other agencies like the Defense and State Departments through February 2nd. Speaker Johnson can only afford to lose 4 Republican votes to pass his plan in the House without any Democratic support. And for more on this, let's bring in David Brody, CBN's chief political analyst. David, good to see you. So this is Speaker Johnson's first major test. Do you think he can do it? And do you think he can survive as Speaker, or will he be ousted like Kevin McCarthy?
No, I don't think he's going to be ousted at all, and he'll survive it. And here's why, Jenna. There's three main reasons. I mean, first of all, he's in the grace period, so they're willing to give, they being all Republicans, kind of willing to give him some grace. Number two, the truth of the matter is that this is just a short-term funding bill. So it would basically be just a couple months, and then the real heavy lift of the full year funding will get going in January. That'll be the real test. And so those are two big ones. And look, ultimately what this is about for Mike Johnson is he's in that grace period. And I think the Republicans are willing to kind of basically let him go. There is a third reason here, Jenna, too, and that is, in essence, he doesn't have the baggage that Kevin McCarthy has. So you put it all together, and I think he's good for now, even though you're right. This is pretty much like Kevin McCarthy's, what got Kevin McCarthy in trouble. But for all those reasons I just laid out, I think he'll be able to punt this, if you will, to January. And then at that point, then the rubber's going to meet the road a little bit more to be even more difficult.
David, in the race for the White House, Tim Scott officially bowed out of the race. What impact will that have, given he wasn't polling very well?
None. So let me just, and look, I like Tim Scott, don't get me wrong, but womp womp. I mean, he wasn't polling anywhere near what he should have been. And so maybe a little bit of that goes to Nikki Haley, maybe a little bit to Ron DeSantis. But having said that, so what? Because none of them, even if everybody dropped out, let's say Ron DeSantis dropped out and Vivek Ramaswamy dropped. Well, anyhow, we'll go there. Ron DeSantis, Vivek, and Tim Scott, and they all went with Nikki. All that support went to Nikki Haley to take on Trump. Doesn't matter. Trump's up by so much.
Yeah.
None of this is really going to matter, Jenna.
Yeah. David, Virginia Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger is running for governor of the Commonwealth. That leaves one open seat in the House that's pretty competitive, currently held by Democrats. What could that mean for party control next year?
It's crucial, Jenna. As a matter of fact, the Cook Political Report just in the last couple hours has rated that race from likely Democrat to lean Democrat. So it's gone a little bit more towards the almost to a toss-up, not yet. The point is that Democrats might be still slightly favored, but having said that, it's going to probably end up being a toss-up seat, which it typically is in every election. So it's going to be crucial. And of course, as you know, Republicans can only afford to lose, well, it'd have to be a total of 5 seats. So for them to lose control of the House. So this is a big one. It's what everybody's watching. And just to be clear, this is in the kind of like the exurbs of Washington, D.C. in that Fredericksburg area. And it's going to be crucially important. A lot will depend on who the Democrats put up. Because Spanberger was big on the pro-choice issue, and we'll see how much the Democrat follows that lead.
All right, David, we'll leave it there. Thank you, David. Great to see you this Monday.
You too, Jenna.
Well, a show of support for Israel from the nation's capital coming up. How tomorrow's march is combating a rise in anti-Semitism. Welcome back. Happening tomorrow, a massive march for Israel right here in the nation's capital. Event organizers say the goals are threefold: calling for the release of the more than 200 hostages held by Hamas, standing against the rising tide of anti-Semitism since the October 7th attack, and showing support for the Biden administration and members of Congress who are backing Israel's right to defend itself. The march is from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. You can watch live coverage on our CBN YouTube page and the CBN News Channel or any of our CBN News platforms. Susan Michael is the USA Director of the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, and she joins us now. Susan, welcome. So tomorrow is really more of a rally than a march, as I understand it. What are you expecting?
Well, we are expecting thousands of people to come out to the National Mall in Washington, D.C. to show their support of Israel. And we've been promoting this for the last week, inviting everyone to come out because Israel needs to see us, they need to hear us, and this is a great opportunity to come out and voice and show our support.
Yeah, tomorrow's rally comes after some 100,000 people turned out in Paris to march against anti-Semitism. Susan, how important is it to see shows of unity like this?
It's very important because the anti-Israel protests, or what would be pro-Hamas protests, have been taking place all around the world and across our nation. And just last weekend, some 40,000 marchers showed up to march in favor of Hamas. Now, this is unheard of. So we must come out in stronger and larger numbers to really demonstrate the support for Israel that's here in the grassroots of America. And this is how you do it, with numbers, by showing up. And that's what we'll be doing.
So what do you make of the rise in anti-Semitism around the world? We're seeing even on college campuses. You know, obviously it's been there for a long time, but how do we fight back against it, Susan?
Yes, it has been there for a while. We've been voicing concern about it. And now since October the 7th, it's just exploded onto the world scene. And we must learn to speak up. We must learn to give an answer. We must be bold and courageous. These are not days for us to be afraid and to sulk back, but we must stand up. Israel needs our defense. I will tell you, many in the Jewish community have been asking, where are all these Christian supporters of Israel? We don't hear them and we don't see them. And this is why it's so important we learn to speak up and give an answer, whether it's in rallies or it's on social media where you see lies being passed around, and we need to give a defense.
Right. Susan, I wanted to ask you, for Christians who believe in the power of prayer, you and your organization actually have an event coming up this weekend. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, we believe first and foremost in prayer, and we've been doing a lot of it all around the world. But this weekend, we have a weekend of prayer where we are asking churches all around the world, not just across America, but around the world, to commit to praying for Israel and the release of the hostages, knowing that it's not just churches, but synagogues will also be praying for that, as they do every weekend. But I believe as we all agree in prayer in our own services, and we call out to the God of heaven for the miracle these hostages need, I believe we'll see a breakthrough. And so we're very excited to see the momentum of this all around the world, that we will be crying out to the Lord this weekend, November 17 through 19.
Okay. Susan Michael with the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, thank you so much for coming on this evening, and the best of luck to you tomorrow and this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the hunt for Israel's most wanted man is on when we come back. Why Israel is making clear the leader of Hamas's days are numbered. The most wanted man in Israel is still at large, but according to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his days are numbered. 61-year-old Yahya Sinwar is the head of Hamas and oversaw the October 7th massacre. George Thomas has more.
A murderer and terrorist, notoriously wanted by Israeli security, Yahya Sinwar is the leader of Hamas terrorist organization in Gaza.
9 days after Hamas's terror attacks, the IDF put out this video declaring Yahya Sinwar Israel's most wanted man.
The IDF considers Sinwar a direct enemy of the state of Israel, and his genocidal terrorist organization, Hamas, is a threat to the entire world.
In 2015, the State Department designated Sinwar as a terrorist. 2 years later, he became chief of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Israel says Sinwar has repeatedly called for the death of Israelis.
سيهاجم شعبنا كل المستوطنات مرة واحدة. سيجد كل واحد منهم إما سكينا يطعن به أو سيارة يدهس بها أو زجاجة حارقة يشعل بها قلوبكم.
Days after the October 7th attacks, Israel put Sinwar on a kill list, accusing him of masterminding the attacks. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Sinwar is now a dead man walking.
The Hamas terrorist organization has no boundaries. Israel's citizens witnessed this firsthand on October 7th when they saw the murders, abuse, brutality, rape, kidnapping, and other atrocities conducted by the terrorists. Hamas leadership is responsible for this, and we will get to them. We will get to Yahya Sinwar, and we will eliminate him.
Israel's defense minister telling Gazans that if they want the war to end soon, they should help find and kill the 61-year-old Palestinian dubbed Gaza's bin Laden.
Hamas, an Iranian proxy, sent thousands of its fighters across the Gaza border that Saturday morning, a month ago, into some 20 towns and villages here in southern Israel, killing more than 1,400 people.
Days later, Israel launched Operation Swords of Iron, vowing to eliminate the terror group from the coastal enclave.
One thing I can say to the citizens of Israel at the end of the war, there will no longer be Hamas in Gaza. There will be no security threat from the Gaza Strip to Israel. And Israel will have complete freedom of action to carry out any security actions it needs against anyone who threatens us.
This week, Netanyahu compared Sinwar to Hitler, accusing him of hiding in a bunker while his people in Gaza suffer.
Yahya Sinwar hides in his bunker and lets the Hamas field commanders die in the field. In our forces, our commanders head to the front line, leading their troops, charging forward and making real achievements in the field.
George Thomas, CBN News, Southern Israel.
Finally tonight, a story of hope. A Georgia pastor who was in Israel when the war broke out is thanking God for what he calls his miraculous rescue, along with 30 others who were stranded in Nazareth. Wendy Griffith has the story.
Pastor Todd Cox of Stone Point Church in Cumming, Georgia, had been in Israel for 7 days. During that time, he baptized 16 people in the Jordan River and also renewed his vows with his wife at Magdala. All happened according to plan until Saturday morning, October 7th.
That's when we got the information that the war had broken out, that about 4,000 rockets had been fired in the south.
What was your first instinct?
Previous to the ministry, I was in the Coast Guard, and so I'm a rescuer at heart, and I'm a leader and a take charge guy. It certainly made me want to do something and to jump into action, but the good news is the Lord really just gave me a sense of peace and calm.
Although up north in Nazareth, a safer part of Israel, they realized that could change.
We contacted, of course, the embassy. We filled out paperwork with the State Department to let them know where we were. So they could get in touch with us if there was an emergency. And there was some options to fly out of Tel Aviv into Istanbul. And then that went away. And of course, people were a little worried about going down to Tel Aviv when rockets are going that way.
Cox had been posting about their situation, and the first miracle happened when a friend saw the post and connected them with Representative Corey Mills of Florida.
The next day, he flew out to Jordan, personally flew out to Jordan, came across the border, made his contacts, and met us in Nazareth and got on the bus with us in Nazareth and escorted us all the way across the border, personally took care of us, and got us into a hotel in Amman, Jordan, where we were able to fly out the following day. And I just truly believe that God used her and Representative Mills as his instruments to rescue us.
Judy Paxton, Pastor Todd's mother, also on the trip, agrees.
Absolutely. He's my hero. He came in with a plan. He made us all feel at ease. Somebody had sent me a passage, and it said, "He will send his angels to rescue you." And so I showed him that verse, and I said, you're the angel that God sent to rescue us.
News of the rescue quickly spread.
I hope that, them being home now, or them actually getting out and to be in a safe space, has given them confidence that Americans won't be left behind.
The lesson in all of this for Pastor Todd: stay close to Jesus.
But if we're not close and we're not listening and we're not tuned into his voice, then we're going to miss it. And so I just want to encourage people to be close to him, to be in his word, to be listening to his still small voice.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
And that's a great word and what we'll end on this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Take care.